papers I've got are my background paper, which is a full piece of paper, and a few strips of paper. So I've got yellow, some purple, and some of this hexagon stuff, which I quite like. I also have a little collection of papers down here that I might add in. So I've got some nice blue stuff and a bit of black for contrast if I fancy it. A little bit of kind of brown paper, and also some bits of magazines because I quite liked the texture of the background, the rocks. So I might use some of that as well, but we'll see how we go. So your base wants to be a rectangle or a square piece of paper, and that's going to, basically we're going to strip this in the middle, and that's going to create what's called the warp. And the warp are the, in weaving, the warp is the lines that go up and down, and that's kind of your fixed point. And then the weft, which goes across, those are the bits that come in and weave in and out. So we're going to create the warp first out of paper. So I'm going to fold this piece of paper in half the way that I want my warp to go. So I want my warp to go up and down this long edge. So I'm going to fold it in half like this, and then I'm just going to use a ruler and a pencil, and I'm going to draw a line at the top. It's going to be you don't have to measure this, but a nice straight line at the top, and that is going to be where we cut up to. So you don't want to cut all the way through the card, otherwise you'll just end up with loads of strips of card. So we need to create a line that we're going to cut up to, and that'll keep all of our warp together. So I'm just going to draw a little line. Mine is about 1 centimetre from the top open edge of the paper. So there's the fold, here's the folded edge, and the line that we're drawing is on the open edge all the way along like that. And that's just going to keep us so that we don't cross that line where we're cutting our lines. And now we're going to cut our warp in. So you can be very precise about this if you would like to, and you could measure along the line, and you could, with a ruler, you could just put little notches in for where you would like your weft to go. But you don't necessarily have to do that. I'm a bit gung-ho about these sorts of things, so I like to just get in and cut. But if you would like to be very, very precise, then you could measure it and cut it. But I'm just going to go in and cut about 1 centimetre from the folded edge up to our drawn line. So I've got to do this at a funny angle so you can see. But so I'm just going to cut up, and then I'm going to stop at the line I've drawn, and I'm just going to do that all the way along, so about 1 centimetre strips. Inevitably going to do what I've done, which is get just a little bit at the end that's a bit too thick, so I'm going to cut my slice evenly. And then I might just trim a little bit off the edge to make that end one a little less fat. So I've got this now, which is kind of like all joined at one end and then all fringed at the other end, and the fringed end is the folded bit. So when we unfold it, we end up with a kind of sliced bit of card. So now that we've got our warp, we can start introducing our weft, which are the pieces that go along. It's a very basic weaving technique we're going to do. We're just going to go under, over, under, over, under, over each one of these warp threads. I say threads, it is paper, but obviously weaving is often done with textiles. And before we start, I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So you want an uneven number of warp threads, because that means if I bring my example, you can see that it starts and ends in the same way on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So if you've got an uneven number of warp threads, then that means that your start and finish will always look the same. You'll see what I mean once we start going. So if you've cut yours and you have an even number of warp threads, just slice one off the edge and it'll just make it a little bit more symmetrical, if you want that anyway. So I'm going to go in with, I'm going to start selecting a piece of paper. So I've cut these into little strips that are about 1 centimetre wide as well. So I'm going to hopefully end up with this kind of lovely checked effect. So just go ahead, if you've not cut any bits of paper yet, then just cut a few strips of a different colour that you like. And the strips want to be longer than your warp piece of paper. So your weft strips want to be slightly longer, and that's because we're going to tuck them underneath at the end. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start from, I'm just going to start with an over and then go under the next thread, over, under. I'll try and put this right close so you can see. So I've got over, under, over, and I'm going to go under. At this point, don't worry about it being straight, we can move it around later. Over, under, over, and you can be kind of firm with the paper, but also watch out because obviously it can rip. And once you've got it all the way through from one side to the other, you can then just sugar it up to the top or the bottom depending on what you want to do. So I'm just going to pop this up to the top. It might need a little bit of a wiggle to get right up to the top of your lines. See if you can get it all the way up there. This first one is the toughest to get into position because you're kind of making it, forcing it in between the first fresh cuts of paper. So that's our first one done. And then the next one I'm going to choose a different colour and I'm going to do the opposite to what I started with. So if I started over, I'm going to go under first, over next, under, over. You can see that, and just keep doing that all the way along. There we go. And you'll know if you've done it right because once you slide that up to the top, if they should be alternating in colour, you can see it goes purple, yellow, purple, yellow, purple, yellow, purple, yellow. If any of them are the same, and there's a purple and a yellow at the top on the same warp, that just means that you've gone the same under over pattern that you did in the first one. So you could leave it or you can take it out and redo it. So I'm just going to carry on with different thread colours, and I'm thinking about a repeating pattern. So I've got these 3 types of paper that I'm using, and I think I'm going to repeat them. When you're nearly at the bottom and you think, oh, I might need a little bit more space, you can go back through and just wiggle all your papers right up next to each other. I'm going to turn it around so I can do it a bit easier. Wiggle them right up next to each other so that they're nice and tight and there's no gaps. And that means you'll fit in more strips and more colour. And also your paper weaving will be more strong, because you'll notice that it kind of holds itself together. The more strips you put in, it, like weaving does, it's a new piece of paper basically, all woven together. So it's got its own strength and it can hold its own structure. And the tighter that it is, the kind of more long-lasting that structure will be. So I'm getting to the end of mine now, and I'm really hoping I can squeeze in a bit of purple at the end. But if you've got through this already, and you would like to add an extra, like some extra lines. So for instance on this one here you can see I added these yellow lines in afterwards. You can start just slicing up some thinner pieces of paper in the colour that you would like to use. So that is my full piece of paper weaving done. And it's up to you really. Some, like, you might like these edges that kind of give it a bit more texture and things like that. So you can leave them out if you like, or you could trim them down to all be the same length. Or you can just fold them. So this is the back here. You can just fold them in and stick them down. I'm not going to glue mine because I'm going to try and do something else quickly. But I just fold these in like this. You can see that that finishes off the edge really nicely. So it's up to you whether you leave it tassely or if you fold it and stick it. It's completely up to you. So in my example here, I folded the edges down to create a nice clean edge. So you just stick them on the back. But quickly before I finish up, let's add one last colour in there. I kind of want some of this pale turquoisey blue because I think it'll look really nice. And so I'm going to cut some quite thin pieces this time. Instead of thicker, I'm going to go for a bit thinner. Not too thin because it'll be quite difficult to push through, but maybe half the width of my first ones, or a little bit less. And that means that they can go in and lay on top of the colours you've got already and still show those other colours, but also add another line. And these are going to be kind of wonky because it's harder to cut thin pieces to the right same size, isn't it? So nice and thin. Let's just do 3 for now. And then you can, now you've got your piece here that's like done all the way up and down, you can just lay these on top at first and just think, where do I want them to go? Where will they look best? Will they look best going up and down? Or will they look best going across? I think I'm going to do mine maybe going up and down to just break up the purpley bits a little bit. And so, yeah, so what you can do there is you just thread them underneath the pieces you've done already. So I'll try and do this so you can see. So it just goes underneath the pieces of paper you've got in there already, and you can just slide this through. The easy thing is that it just goes under every section that there is, if you see what I mean. That has added an extra line of detail into the weaving. And you can do this as much as you like, you know, or as much as your weaving will allow, and add in like thinner lines going up and down or across, just to break it up a bit and to add extra shots of colour that maybe you just wanted a little bit of. And that is the basics of paper weaving. You could probably translate this quite easily into doing something a little bit more 3D. Or you could weave something and then you could make it into something. Or you can just make these as standalone pieces of artwork. I've got one that's up on my living room wall, which I really like because it goes really nicely with the colours in my room. I kind of chose the colours that I wanted to have in my room and then put them into a weaving. So yeah, and also collect any bits of paper that you think might be useful. So birthday card envelopes are my new favourite thing to keep if they're like a nice colour. And any envelopes really. But yeah, keep bits of paper and keep them all in a file, and then you've got loads of scraps. So that is paper weaving. If you have any questions or you want any more information about it, then let me know. But have a go and share what you make, because we would love to see it. And yeah, see if you can get really complicated as well, because I kind of stopped at this level of detail, but you could go a lot more detailed if you wanted. It could be very pixely and amazing. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you later.